what is up? Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Matt Forte, and we are here live at the Build Studio in New York City. For over 40 years, our next guest was a close friend and manager to Robin Williams. As executive producer on the recent HBO doc, Robin Williams, Come Inside My Mind, he sought to explore the origins of Robin's genius. And in this new Time Life release, he's compiled a definitive collection of Robin's work with 50 hours of content spanning decades. Here to tell us all about it, the great David Steinberg is in the building, ladies and gentlemen. How about that? We excited for David? Excited David's here? We're going to bring him out in just a second, but first, I believe we have a look at the collection, so let's go ahead and run that clip. Ladies and gentlemen, make some noise for David Steinberg right here. Come on.
Thank you. Thank you. Hope I'm not too big a disappointment, but one day I'll be a star.
You're a star to me, David. You're a star to me.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much for being here and hanging out with us. And, you know, because I haven't seen you, this is my first time meeting you, but the documentary over the summer, congratulations. That was a phenomenal piece. You were executive producer on that.
Yeah, thank you. You know what? I was particularly proud of that. When Robin passed on, we had been together 40 or somewhere between 40 and 45 years. And when that came to an end, I felt that the best thing I could do to reward his loyalty for all of those years and his friendship was to do everything I can to pass his legacy along. Yeah. And not wanting people to forget the gift he brought to everybody, because I don't know anybody who was as gentle and as comedically adventurous and aggressive as Robin was. So what I wanted to do was make sure that the future audiences could either meet Robin or enjoy what he had done all those years. And my first thought was to go to HBO and do that documentary, or get Alex Gibney and Marina Zenovich to do it. HBO bought it in the first meeting, and I wanted the theme to be Robin's genius. And they stayed true to that, and then do what the second phase of that was to do this the comic, the DVD collection for Time Life, where we could show the progression of it. And I think in this DVD collection, it's so worth experiencing. For me, it's like Robin being alive again, so.
Well, that's one of the things that I'm really excited about with the collection, that it spans so many decades. And as someone who grew up watching Robin, one of the things I loved, and there's a lot of it on here, were his late night appearances, right? Because he operated at a different level, head and shoulders. The rules didn't apply. You knew if Robin was going to be on, be it Letterman or whatever show he was going to be on that night, he's going to come out and do whatever he wanted to do, and it's going to be captivating. And whenever you saw him, I always felt like you were watching a master at work, because it looked so easy. He just floated through the space, right?
You know, Matt, that's so... I'm sorry.
Well, what I was going to say is, so you watch this master, I'm excited to see all of it laid back to back, to if there is a progression or an evolution that I missed over the years, because I always felt he was just the best. But how does the best become the best, you know?
By being true to who he is. Robin, we never, in all the years, we never allowed anyone to censor Robin. That's why early on you won't see any network appearances. He did Mork and Mindy, where he got to pretty much do what he wanted to do. And we did a couple of Carson shows a year, and that was the only television we did, yeah. But when he used to go out and do his concerts, we did a thing at the University of Florida called the Gator Growl, 80,000 people, and someone who later became a friend of mine, Scott Zeiger, who ran that thing, they wanted Robin to watch what he said. And I said to them on the phone, I'm sorry, Robin does whatever pops into his head. He's not changing a word. And this was for 80,000 people. And it was a big check for Robin. I said, if you're not prepared to have Robin Williams, then you shouldn't have him. We should probably not do the date, but he's going to do whatever he thinks he wants to do. On the late night shows, when somebody goes on, they do a pre-interview. Yeah. Robin never did a pre-interview. I did every one of his pre-interviews. That's amazing. I knew some of the subject matter that Robin would enjoy talking about, so that's what we did. Yeah. And Robin never knew what the questions were going to be before he went on. He liked being surprised. And he was always true to himself. That's why he was one of a kind. He just trusted his brain.
There's a great Letterman appearance that I just remember it. I'm not sure because I know what's on here, but I haven't watched all of it yet, right? But there's one I remember. It was after Letterman had his surgery, and Robin comes out dressed in scrubs, and he just takes over the whole theater. He walks into the audience. He's doing bits and this. David he knew the second Robin walked out, he lost control of the show, and he was fine with it.
Then Robin had heart surgery after that, and then when he came back, they were kindred spirits because but they always did. We managed Letterman as well, so they knew each other from the beginning.
Were you, as his manager, you knew this about Robin, but you had to have learned it over time, right? Like when Robin did his initial appearances, did you know that once he got out there, that's how it was going to go? And were you nervous about that Robin was just going to be Robin, or was
never?
No,
I would never. We never let anyone think they were Robin. Yeah. We never let anyone interfere with that freedom. Our job was to protect his freedom. The management job, the company that I worked at also managed Woody Allen, and their job was to protect Woody Allen's freedom so he could make the movies he wanted, and that's what they did. And we protected Robin's space and. With Billy Crystal, who I still manage, it's protecting their space so they can be who they are. And Robin was fearless. Robin was the most fearless comic I've ever seen because he didn't really prepare.
Yeah, he just went out there and just felt the moment. And was
in a normal way, he didn't prepare. He just...
Well, speaking of preparation, one of the things, so you mentioned how gentle he was and what a kind soul he was. And I years ago, before I did this, I worked retail at Apple, right? And I worked over in the Westchester, and a buddy of ours had an interaction with Robin once. He came in, and there's two things he walked away with. He was blown away by how just sort of mild-mannered, and he was very kind and very sweet, but very low-key. And his energy was a lot lower than he anticipated, and his arms were hairier than he thought they'd be. And these were the two things he remembered. So was his back, yeah. These were the two things he remembered about Robin. But it was such a stark contrast to the character that we saw on television, the Robin that we grew up with. And I'm curious, you were on the other side of that. Was it an instantaneous flick of a switch? Was there a process for him to get to that level of energy?
No.
It just happened.
It was a question or something he saw somewhere, and he went from 0 to 120. Yeah. And what I used to try to do was just throw him something that he could spark to. Mm-hmm. And then he was off and running. But he was a very, very shy person. And he kept to himself. He loved to run cross country. He used to till his knees went bad. Then he was a voracious bike rider. He used to ride 40 miles a day. Wow. And that's how he thought. Yeah. That's how he relaxed. That's how he recharged. Yeah. That's just what he did. The gentlest person I know, though.
Yeah, yeah. What were your feelings? Oh, go on.
Did your Apple friend talk about, or did the person who worked at Apple, who met Robin, did he mention how knowledgeable Robin was?
Yes, he did. He said he was very nice. He knew exactly what he was there for, and yeah, and he hardly had to do anything. You know, our job there when we worked there and we were sales and whatnot was just to ask a bunch of questions, find out what they don't know, recommend yada yada yada. And he said Robin already knew everything. He said I didn't know what I was doing there. I was just trying to talk to Robin at that point. I was just trying to have a little bit of Robin. Yeah.
He was that way about everything that interested him. He knew everything about bikes, about the materials that made racing bikes, about changing and interchanging equipment on bikes, everything about computers.
Well, you always got that sense from his comedy because of the variety and depth of his references.
Yeah.
You know, he was everywhere instantaneously, and you can only do that if you have a deep well of knowledge to pull from. So he obviously was very, like, you know,
he didn't sleep much.
No,
he was an incessant reader, and I was with him whenever he worked. I was always with him, and we used to get on his airplane and fly to dates, and there would generally be something, a script to read or something. Someone wanted Robin to do something, and he always wanted me to read it, and then he would read it, and we would never discuss it until we had both read it. Well, he would read the script. 20 minutes later, he'd come over. What'd you think? I said, I think the cover's great. He said, well, did you read it? I said, I am reading it. I'm clearly not as smart as you, so it's going to take a little while. And then, did you read it yet? No, I haven't. I'm having a salad. That's it. I'm having a chili cheese dog. Look at me. And finally, he would badger me. I would read it, and then we would discuss it. And he would have a real knowledge of what the words were and what the words meant, so much deeper than my knowledge allowed me to go. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because Robin knew the history behind the references. He knew. He was so damn smart.
Yeah, he saw the
and
subtext
interesting.
and then the subtext. Like he knew.
He was interested.
Yeah, for sure. What was your feeling about when Robin wanted to transition from comedy into more dramatic roles and stuff of that nature?
It was never a transition for him. He studied at Juilliard. That's true. He wanted to be an actor, and Robin was a great actor from the beginning. He didn't learn to be an actor. Yeah. What he learned was how to plumb his depths so that he could get to those places, and he wasn't afraid of showing everything. Yeah. He just wasn't afraid. He didn't write out his the text of what he did comedically. Huh. You know, it was written out because we had it, but Robin would look it over. But if we felt that a reference, a joke, a topic would fit better at the beginning of the show than the end of the show, I would mention to him after the show or the next day before the show. And if he agreed with me, he was able to shuffle that deck like a great card trick, and he could put the king of diamonds at the end of the deck without anyone ever knowing it. I didn't know it. I produced an evening at the Met that he did early on. We spent 4 or 5 months together on the road, writing, shuffling, getting ready and making it a progressive story that ended with the birth of his son. That night, after spending 4, 5, 6 months with him on the road, he did 25% new material the night we filmed it. I don't know where the hell this came from. But he was the only person that I ever knew that could do that.
It's pretty
He's a
amazing.
genius. He was a legit genius.
Yeah, legitimately. The word I think gets tossed around sometimes, but he definitely embodied everything of that word. He was a genius. You know, this collection. God, there's so much great stuff in here. Is there anything that didn't make the cut? Is there still?
Sure.
There's still more stuff, right? There's just so
Yeah,
much. Because he
there's-
was someone that he was just so generous and he gave so much.
There is more. Time Life did a great job of compiling this, and it was a collaborative thing where. But you get to see him really being improvisational. When you see all of the awards that he gave out, he was the most sought-after person to give an award or get an award because they all knew they were getting something, and no one ever had to write for him.
Yeah, bring him in.
And in looking at this 40-year career, you see the genius, how he had big balls. He was able, literally,
After 40 years, you learn these things about a person.
some things you're not starting out to learn, you just do. But he was not afraid of trying anything new, but he had to believe it. There were things that I wanted him to do that I'd badger him into trying.
Like what? What'd you have to badger him to do?
I'm trying to think of this one thing in particular, and it'll come to me.
Yeah, we'll come back to it.
But he hated it. But I badgered him every night, before a show, after a show. Finally, he tried it. But if he didn't agree with me, and I badgered him into trying it, he would deliberately tank it. He would deliberately do it shitty. So then he could say to me, "See, didn't work."
Yeah.
I said, "You didn't try. You tried to kill it." That was the end of those discussions.
You know, and this dovetails nicely into the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about. When we were watching the preview, there's a little clip of the USO tours, and I want to ask you about that. And he was playing the harmonica, and you said I had to convince him to do the harmonica bit.
He was a great harmonica player.
Yeah.
Robin had multiple gifts. Robin had his dexterity was not just in his mind. He had great physical dexterity. He was like a dancer, okay? And he could do anything, and he didn't mind failing, but he could try something. And he was a great harmonica player because he was a rock and roll comic. That's what all the rock stars really liked him early on, his whole career. They were very enamored with the dangerous nature of what he did. Other comics are more prepared. Robin lived on the edge and loved it. So when I brought him the idea of going to Afghanistan and Iraq, where I think we went 4 or 5 times, and he was tireless in what he did, I said, "Well, Kid Rock is going to be with us." He said, "Great." And I said, "I'd love for you to do a duet with Kid." "Oh, fuck, what am I going to do with Kid Rock?" I said, "Well, you're going to play the harmonica and riff with him." He said, Kid Bob, which is his name, does this for a living. Yeah. I said, "Pretty much that's how you make a living as well." So, and I talked him into it, and after a couple of missed opportunities, because he was fighting with me about it, he got on stage. Kid Rock, I had Kid try to bring him up, and Robin did it, and on our DVD set, it's magical.
Yeah.
It's just magical.
Yeah, that's definitely something I know I haven't seen before, so I'm excited to dive in to see some of the USO stuff.
That's
as
great.
well.
I wish there was more of that, but we wouldn't let them film too much.
Yeah.
Because Robin did not, although he just didn't want to be Bob Hope.
Right.
He didn't want to make a living on the USO. He wanted to do it. We didn't allow any press. We didn't allow journalists to come along, and the USO was spot on. They were so great with us. So,
Well, Yeah.
It was a great experience. Best experience, I think, of our professional life.
Yeah. Well, that experience and a ton more. We're going to go to audience in just a second, but this set, and it's beautiful, by the way. This is the packaging for the set. You open it up. I'm just going to do this real quick. There's like this full color book in here and all these sorts of things. It's a fantastic package. There's tons of content in here. I'm going to get this and pour over the whole thing. And people can pre-order it right now on timelife.com. And I think it's coming out, I want to say October. I wrote it down here. What we got? The 29th, it's just expected to start shipping. But they can pre-order it right now. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, that would be great. And I promise no one will be disappointed in this thing.
No.
The only thing we're missing is Robin standing up selling this thing.
Yeah.
Because he would love to be a double talking pitch salesman. I mean, we were in a car in some city, and on the back of a bus in front of him were photograph of two Hispanic lawyers, and their phone number on their ad was 222-2222. It was all twos. And Robin used to love to riff on this. Yeah. And he was great at speaking pidgin Spanish or pidgin Russian or whatever it was. And he used to double talk. Dos loyeritos. And he would go on and on.
He had
never stop.
He had that of all the amazing talents he had, he could speak a language he couldn't speak. Do you know what I mean? Like he could.
He actually
emulate a
learned
language.
Russian.
He actually learned Russian.
He actually learned Russian
Why
from Moscow on the Hudson.
Was that for just because he felt like learning Russian? Was that for a project? Was that no?
For Moscow on the Hudson.
Oh, for Moscow on the Hudson.
For the movie. He wanted to be authentic, and he hung out with the extras, and he hung out with all the people so he could actually learn to speak Russian.
It's unbelievable. If you had to put a number on it, how many hours? Because even when he passed, Disney had released with Aladdin just a little bit, some sketches of some outtakes of just improvisation stuff that he did, that he had done as the genie, and all of that too was gold. There's how many piles and piles of outtakes do you guys have that you one day will sort through and say, here's another collection of his genius?
It's one thing to get the rights. Time Life and
that's the tough part.
And another guy who went after a bunch of the rights, Paul Brownstein. Yeah. They spent hours and hours and hours locating the material, but then clearing it. Yeah. The stuff on the genie. They had started animating the movie. Then they came to us, and we made the deal for Robin. And Robin went in then, and they film when you're doing the voice for an animated film. They actually film you, and then they reanimate, or they for the expressions so that it does somehow recognize you. They had to throw out all the animation they'd done because Robin rewrote everything. Just improvisationally.
Yeah. Pretty amazing.
You couldn't harness him. No. Whenever he did a movie, with every director he ever worked with, he would give them what they wanted. Then he said, "I need to do one for me. I need to do this for me," and then he would do 5 more his way. And more often than not, they wanted it their way and used theirs, but they always gave him the freedom. He always needed that freedom. Freedom was what he was all about.
It's just so, this is the last thing I'll say, that just like, you think of how many performers, how many actors could walk into a gig, specifically you think of like Disney, and here they have an entire story, an entire setting, an entire world built, and Robin walks in and he goes, well, I'm going to reference pop culture from the past 15, 20, 30 years, and we're going to make it work. And they find a way to write it in and have it make sense. Well, the genie's a cosmic being, I guess, and so this fits. It's like, I can't imagine them working around and bending over backwards like that unless it was Robin, right? Like
Well, yeah, and it wasn't just because he demanded it. He delivered what was clearly gold, and they wanted to utilize it.
Crazy
and
not to, yeah.
It's
Amazing. Well, we got. Thank you for coming in. We're going to do some questions. We got microphones in the room. How many? I got two, three. Fantastic. 3 questions. First one's right here on the green couch.
Hey, David. Thanks so much for being here. I have a 2-part question. The first part is, in all the time knowing Robin, knowing the type of person that he was there anything that ever truly surprised you? Like actually surprised you? And the second part is, in compiling this, what was like the greatest lesson that you learned from Robin?
Let me go to compiling this, okay? When Robin died, I spoke to Robin pretty much every day, okay, for 40 years. Sometimes really short conversations because he just didn't want to discuss anything, but we pretty much spoke every day. That void for me was pretty incredible. The yin and yang of how we dealt with each other. I was really a vacuum for me, and not to have that spirit in my life anymore. And for quite some time, it was too difficult to address. But when I finally realized that my job isn't complete because now it's the legacy, now it's passing on what Robin did, so it wouldn't all go away, you know. And working on this is as close to having Robin alive, because with each appearance, you know, I can recall something about it where something funny happened. He did a Prince's Trust show in England, and the first thing they said to him was, "You cannot look at the Queen." Okay, so great. First thing he did, he walks on the stage, acknowledges the Queen. The Queen almost shit, as did all of the producers and stuff like that. The audience stood. They loved it so much because he broke the rules, and he could do that because of those gorgeous blue eyes. At that show, I was backstage, and they didn't allow people back. You could bring one person. So anyway, I went with Robin. And we were in this crappy theater out in Wimbledon. And there was no phones, and this was before cell phones. There was a payphone on the wall. And Elton John was on a payphone ripping his manager a new asshole. Oh my God, the screaming. Cut to 4 minutes later, Elton's on the stage performing. Maybe Candles in the Wind, I don't know, but something dramatic and fantastic. And I thought, what a great seat at show business I've got. You know, and it would make me, compiling this, it would make me remember some of those things.
Those moments, yeah.
Yeah, it was sad, but fantastic. I'm so glad, not only for the 40 years with Robin, but getting a chance to relive it all with this. And
Pretty nice.
yeah.
Cool. Thank you for that. You get 2 more? Where's our next one coming from? It's going to be right over here, green couch.
Hi there, I'm Bianca, and I just wanted to ask you a question regarding the relationship between you and him. How did it last 40 years, and how did you even get a start being his manager?
Yeah.
The company that managed Robin, the 2 people who really discovered Robin were Larry Bresner and Buddy Mora. They needed someone at their company. I had a fairly successful public relations company where I had some pretty unique people, and I've never been afraid to speak up. And I became friends with Larry and Buddy, and I had met Robin, and they hired me. I hated being in the public relations business. I hated being the lowest paid and the first fired. So I wanted to be the highest paid and last for a while. So I went into the management business with them. Robin and I hit it off immediately. We had a similar sense of humor. I think he thought I was funny. I knew he was funny. And there was an honesty between us. And we made friends instantly. And that honesty was always respected on both of our parts. And Robin was nuts, and I used to let him know when he was nuts. And there were never deal breakers. We had a fight once. He did a movie with Billy Crystal, whom I still manage, and the movie just, quite frankly, didn't do very well. And I made management mistake 101. I didn't call him on Saturday morning after I knew the Friday night numbers weren't very good. And that really hurt him. But we got through that, and there were other things where he was angry at other people, and so he would vent. But that was the only real issue between Robin and I in that 40 years. We had a great relationship. I'm so lucky.
You know, you talk about how that's the only real issue that you guys had. It's the only fight that you guys
Did I
had.
answer your question?
Yeah.
Good, okay.
That was a great question. Thank
Sometimes I'm just so enjoy my answers. I don't know if I'm answering a question.
you. They're pretty good answers. You're right to enjoy them. But I'm curious, you know, how did Robin, as someone who was so great and so confident, how did he handle when he would stumble, when there was a movie that didn't perform the way he had hoped, or something didn't read the way he had hoped it would, or respond? How did he react to stuff like that? And
He was hurt.
Yeah.
He was hurt, and he let people down, and that maybe it was a flawed experience, but he did not shift the responsibility away from himself. But he was hurt. Robin always wanted to leave the stage with a laugh. Yeah. There were sometimes he did, whenever he'd go on and perform, we would know what the last joke was. Okay? Kind of because it's a build to that. When that joke didn't go over, he was relentless, staying on that stage to find that big laugh to get off with.
He would stay until he got it. Wow.
Yeah, until everybody was exhausted. Enough already.
Do you remember the latest you ever stayed? The longest? Does that stand out?
No.
It was just a thing that he did.
There's only one time I ever saw Robin really tank it on a stage, and that was in England when we were getting ready for that first Prince's Trust. I wanted him to work some clubs to get the references and right and all that stuff. He and I got directed to what I'd requested was comedy clubs, but there is a big club in Windsor. It looks like Caesar's Palace. Clearly not what we were expecting. Robin got on the stage there. He went backstage to visit with Lenny Henry, who was the English comedian who was headlining. And a waitress came out to me and said, Robin would love to look at the notes. I said, well, tell Robin to look in his pocket. She would go back. Mr. Williams said he doesn't have any notes. I said, tell Mr. Williams. Now we've got her going back and forth. Tell Mr. Williams he has the notes. No, Mr. Williams says he doesn't have any. I said, well, tell him he lost the notes. Robin got on the stage, and he came out to this 1,300 people, all horribly dressed farmers in England. It was the one big night that they all went out, and for the very first time, and only time, Robin got out and said, So, where are you from? Which is a standard when comics don't know what to say. And he got, and I bet you he did a minute and a half of just nothing and walked off the stage. The only time I saw him die.
And that must have killed him. He must have been like so beat up over that. Like
We laughed like crazy when we got back in the
would have
car.
assumed.
I just thought it was the funniest thing I'd ever seen.
So something like that he interpreted differently than say a film or like that type. That's not considered a failure in that moment. No, that's
that was
different.
a mistake.
Yeah, okay.
It was just a silly
Got it.
mistake. The lack of preparation.
We got one more. We're gonna do one more question, right here in the front.
Speaking to Robin Williams for so many years every day, did you notice any sides of his personality that general public never knew about? Maybe you can give us some examples or stories.
You mean toward the
some
end?
personal sides of him, like personality and that you noticed every day.
Robin was a very gentle person, and his feelings would get hurt. If he thought that maybe he didn't spend enough time with someone, being nice to that person, or, oh, Jesus, are they okay? I said, Robin, they came up to you, and their hands were all over you, and you were right to get away from them. You don't owe everybody your life. Oh, are you sure? Are you sure? And then I would turn around, and Robin would be walking over to apologize to someone for being an asshole, when it was the person who was the jerk. But he was so sensitive. If someone needed something or someone was sick, Robin was right there to help them. There were some horrible tragedies that had happened to people in California, illnesses or just heinous behavior. And we would always be arranging for Robin to go and spend time with that person or send a check to that person or... There was so much that Robin did that nobody knew about. And his only caveat was no one can know about it. He was the gentlest person I know, ever knew.
Thank you for that question, and thank you for David for sharing all of this with us and hanging out with us. Again, congrats on the documentary, and thank you for sharing this amazing set with us here. I'll hold it up.
Are you giving everyone in the audience
Am I personally?
a washer dryer?
I have. Yes, we do.
Wouldn't
we have
that
a
be
washer dryer
great?
available for everyone. You saw them backstage. We have them stacked up. That's what those giant boxes were.
Yeah.
Those are the complimentary washer
Be sure
dryers.
and leave with your washer dryer.
Yes.
And a whole stack of quarters.
If there's one thing a bunch of New Yorkers have, it's room for a washer dryer when they get home. We're very considerate with our gifts in this way.
Yeah.
I don't know. We, speaking of a great gift, there's a segue for you. Head over to timelife.com and pre-order your collection here. It's gold in a box, man. It really is, and it's amazing to have it all in one spot. And here's the beauty of it: if you try to look up something on YouTube and the internet goes down, well, hell, you still got your DVDs, which has everything and more stuff you won't find anywhere in this box.
And the quality.
Oh, the quality
of it
top-notch.
is really first class.
You guys did a hell of a job, honestly. And again, thank you. I hope you had a good time with us, David. I hope you
I had a great time.
Oh,
I'm
that's
not
fantastic. Okay, good. So just sit tight. We'll do this again in about 15 minutes. Everybody make some noise for the great David Steinberg. Come on.